ESPN. My name is Chris Hand. Getting right into things today. Joining us on the line, senior editor over at Human Events, veteran Navy intel officer, New York Times bestselling author, Jack Posobiec is on the line. Hey, Jack, how we doing, man?
Hey, Chris, always a pleasure to be on, man.
Hey, I appreciate it. You got a new book coming out that's, days away. 10/22, Bulletproof, the truth about the assassination attempts on Donald Trump. What are you doing gearing up for this book release? It has to be just a mad dash with that going on for you and the election happening.
Well, thank you. It's actually been kind of wild. So I'm going to be doing a lot of media, as I'm sure you're aware, like I am right now, a lot of interviews, so driving around for a lot of that. But at the same time, what I'm doing, though, is I've been going up and down the highways and byways of my home state of Pennsylvania. I'll be going into North Carolina tomorrow and there for a couple of days, going to some of these swing state events. And something that we found that's happening is what we're doing is we're making the book available to people as we have people come up and sign up for this early voting. So there's all these Trump events going on. So it's actually sort of a happy connection that we have, a little bit of synergy where we're doing these early vote events and people want to get the book. And, I was joking, by the way, to people. I was doing an event with Scott Presler up in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago. And I said, look, guys, the book is free, but the selfie, that'll be $30.
I love it. So I was talking with Joe Bob yesterday. You know Joe Bob. He's been opening for Vivek Ramaswamy on some tours, and he drove from Ohio State to Penn State. And so my question for him was,
oh my gosh, grueling.
I know.
Actually, funny enough, I'm going to be at the Ohio State-Penn State game here on I think it's November 2nd. So that'll be something I'm doing.
I love it. But my question for him was, what's the vibe on the ground? And he told me that he's seeing 20-1 Trump signs throughout Pennsylvania. So I want to ask you the same thing. What's your vibe on the ground in Pennsylvania?
Okay, so here's what I saw, and this was all last weekend. I drove all the way up to so I'm from the Philadelphia area, and I was driving all the way up to northeast Pennsylvania, so Scranton, Greeley, Pike County, right up in that corner where it meets New York State. And here was the interesting vibe that I saw. So you're looking at basically a state that's in a civil war because, yes, you do see Trump signs everywhere, yard signs, and people painting the word Trump 2024 up on barns and cars and houses and all sorts of stuff. But Kamala Harris is coming over the top with massive ad spends. And people need to understand this, that in just the state of Pennsylvania alone, not even all the other states, but all in, $500 million is being spent by all campaigns, all outside groups, just on the state of Pennsylvania. This really is the key ground zero battleground of the entire state. So what I saw driving up and down that 476, is called the Northeast Extension there in Pennsylvania, was every 5 miles. And I'm sitting there, actually my dad was with me, so we were doing a little father-son road tripping, and every 5 miles there was a Kamala billboard. Every 5 miles, like clockwork. And we were taking photos of it, and I did a whole Twitter thing that it was boom, Kamala Harris Medicare, boom, Kamala Harris is going to protect Social Security, boom, Kamala Harris is going to protect Social Security. So, really going all in on the government program side. And so there's a lot of spending. You turn on TV, and it's Kamala Harris and Dave McCormick, who's the Senate candidate, just every other commercial, boom, boom, boom. And then if you listen to podcasts, like if you're like me, you listen to podcasts when you drive around. And so I actually ran out of podcasts. I was listening to so many podcasts because I'm a 2X guy. But when you listen, depending on your app, you get those geographic targeted ads. And then so even in my ads, I'm getting the Kamala Harris.
Oh, my gosh.
Getting the Kamala Harris. And I'm like, why is Kamala Harris on, the Charlie Kirk show or something, or War Room when I'm listening to? And you realize that, why are they hitting me? Like, obviously, I shouldn't be someone that's anywhere near their demographic, but that's how much corporate Wall Street money she's got behind them. So people have to understand that, yes, I agree with Joe Bob's idea that the grassroots vibe is very much pro-Trump, but you can't discount that there's a lot of money in these blue areas that is fighting against it.
So I guess my question would be, though, is the money going to be enough? Because we've seen historical trends where Trump is being outspent, as recently as Nikki Haley, right? And he continues to prevail. Do you think that the money being spent in Pennsylvania is going to make a dent?
Well, I think the money is what's keeping her competitive right now. The money is the only thing keeping her competitive because if without that, she would be completely flatlined at this point. Her campaign is absolutely gassed up by this. There is no organic support for Kamala Harris. And you saw that in her Fox News interview where they asked her, what policies are you supporting that you would champion as president to fix any of these issues, which, by the way, you're presiding over because you're currently in government. And she just kept saying over and over, I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not Donald Trump. And so for folks out there that we know there's been this huge groundswell of support for Trump, but remember, there are still a lot of those anti-Trump people. There's those people who just say, I don't want Trump. I don't want him. I don't like the tweets. I don't like the language, et cetera, et cetera. And those people are out there. And that's really the targeted demographic for this money that's being spent. So I would say that this election, as crazy as it is still going to be very close.
In Pennsylvania specifically, though, the Catholic vote is very, very important, correct? Does Kamala skipping the Al Smith dinner hurt her with the Catholic vote in Pennsylvania?
So the Catholic vote in Pennsylvania is number one. It's paramount for this election. This is something that Trump had in 2016, and then Biden as we call him a Catholic in name only, a CINO kind of guy, but he was able to win back. But where Kamala Harris has been trending for years in the negative direction, because if you can even go back to when she was a senator and she was attacking the Knights of Columbus. And the Knights of Columbus, and she was acting as if they were like the KKK or something.
Yep.
These are the guys, by the way, who give you the coffee and donuts after services, and they help you find a seat. They say, hey, I got 2 seats over here. I got 4 seats. You got a family right over here. Come on, let me get you in. They're your ushers. They're your child. I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, by the way. We do blood drives. We bring mulch for a fundraiser and carry it to seniors in the parish. It is a very run-of-the-mill charity organization. So for her to attack them, it really left people with this, Catholics, with this feeling that not only is she someone who is just not supportive of Catholics, but she is going so far as to be anti-Catholic. And so there's a lot of people who look at that. They look at her abortion record. They look at the fact that Merrick Garland has gone after traditional Catholics. They look at the fact that they have pushed back against so many of these issues that Catholics really stand for, like the pro-life issue, that she is getting crushed in the Catholic vote right now. Now, is it as high as I wish it was? No, it is not, because you do still have a lot of the Catholics that, again, go in for these social programs. And a lot of this breaks down racially as well. You see the demographic shift when you go by that. So one of the things that myself and my brother are doing as two Pennsylvania Catholics, and my dad and my mom as well, when they're around, is we've been going to the Latin masses, we've been going to the English masses. We even went to a Polish mass this last weekend in Doylestown at the National Polish Shrine, because we are just trying to get the word out among Catholics. Again, not politicking, but letting people know where each candidate stands on the issues, and then again pushing people to vote early if they haven't done so yet.
I love it, man. I was on my way to church last week and I was checking the feed, and I noticed you had already been to 4 services, and I was like, well, I feel like that's a record. Before I've even made it, you're at 4 services. Do you think we have time to wake up the Catholics and the Christians that are asleep in this country to vote Trump?
Well, one thing that I've noticed among both Catholics and the broader Christians is that you also run up against this sort of barrier. I don't know if it's a mental barrier or a mental block, but you get this sort of feeling out there. People will say, well, I don't like Kamala Harris, but Trump, he's not the most Christian guy. He's not the most doctrinal guy. I just don't know if he's been divorced 3 times and he's got the tweets, et cetera. And I don't like his tweet about this, and I don't like his tweet about that. So I'm going to sit out. And there's been some data that says something like 40 million Christians writ large nationwide are going to sit out the election. And I just got to say, I think that's a cop-out. Look, when it comes to politics, number one, we are duty bound to get involved in the matters of state, right? That's scripture. And number two, we are not electing, it's not the most reverend Donald Trump, right? It's the president of the country.
Yep.
And it comes down to this. Do you want to live in a society? That's what I tell people. Do you want to live in a society where your children are taken out of religious schools, where religious education will be crushed if we continue going down this route of all state education and the public teachers union. They'll get rid of the magnet schools. They'll get rid of any Christian schools. Catholic schools like I went to and like my children go to, they're already being shut down. This will just complete that process. Everyone's going to be sent into state school. Your children will be taught the trans agenda, the pride agenda, the woke racial agenda, pitting races against each other, all this stuff that they do. That's what's going to happen to your children if these people are able to stay in power. So maybe you don't like every single thing about Donald Trump, but you know something? This guy is fighting for our future, and this guy is giving us the opportunity to have, what are those two beautiful words in the Constitution? Religious freedom.
Amen. And he's showing up in places where Christians are. Kamala Harris can't say the same. You know, skipping the Al Smith dinner last night is crazy, especially when you juxtapose it with the new narrative that Trump is in hiding, yet Trump has been everywhere. And I saw you tweet this yesterday, and I want to get your reaction on it. Trump was on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, and he had this to say about regime change in Iran.
Tanks running around.
What's going to happen to Iran with you by the end of your administration?
I'm not asking
I would like
to see Iran be very successful. The only thing is they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Are you okay with the same administration and way of governing stays, or would you like to see it go back to the 70s when Shah's was running it and Iran was one of the top 3 countries in tourism?
Yeah, we can't get totally involved in all. You know, I mean, we can't run ourselves. Let's face it.
Sure.
Patrick, we can't run ourselves.
We can't run ourselves. What's your reaction when you hear Trump saying that about regime change in Iran?
Look, this is a really incredible situation, and you hear these types of people, and, you know, I don't think Patrick Bet-David, and I've heard some of his stuff, and I don't consider him a neocon, but you hear this type of thinking from a lot of people that, well, if, you know, the U.S. just gets involved and supports this one group somewhere in the world, and it's not always Iran, sometimes it's places like Russia, of course, you hear it all the time, or Ukraine, or these various places, you know, we can just get a new government at North Korea, we can just get rid of one group that we don't like, Syria, of course, and then you know, we'll change them out for this opposition, and we'll take over their country, and everything's going to be great. And it's like, guys, we tried this in Afghanistan, we tried this in Iraq, we tried this in Syria for a decade, by the way. For a decade, the United States, we tried it in Libya, by the way, got rid of Gaddafi. So we got rid of Gaddafi, got rid of Saddam Hussein, we got rid of the Taliban temporarily in Afghanistan, only for them to come back in, and it just doesn't work. And so I understand Patrick Bet-David seems like he's coming from this position of thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? But then it goes back to Trump, and he says, guys, I'm just not interested in getting involved in these regime change operations, whether it be a war, whether it by covert action. He's really talking about the America First agenda. And, you know, he's very clear, but he draws the line. He says, look, I don't want them getting a nuclear weapon because he sees that as a threat, not just to the United States, but it would be a threat to Europe, a threat to our allies. So he draws the line of saying, I don't want them to present them as a threat, but if they're not threatening anyone, why would we go in and try to take them over? Because that would be beyond his line. So you're actually seeing a very classical sense of foreign policy from Donald Trump, and it's one that he's adhered to for years. You can go back and hear him talking about the Iraq War 20 years ago, and he was saying the exact same stuff. And so this idea that, you know, we shouldn't be trying to police the entire world, I think is a breath of fresh air. I think it's incredible for a lot of people to hear. I think it really is, just speaks to those America First instincts that we know Donald Trump has. And it also goes to show you that we have to really get out of this mindset that the United States exists, as I said, to be this sort of policeman of the world state, and that, you know, we're working with the European Union and we know what's better for these countries when we have no track record of doing so whatsoever. And you get Donald Trump, and he says, look, cut off the threats. And keep in mind, by the way, just think of the context of this. This is what's amazing, is that Iran is a country that, look, President Trump has said, and his campaign has said, that they're actively trying to assassinate him right now. And he's received multiple briefings on this. He's requested military support for the aircraft and for for vehicles. So we're told that Iran is actively trying to assassinate President Trump. I've got reporting in the new book that about different attempts that haven't even made it public to the news yet. And yet, when it comes to Trump, he doesn't even bring it up. It doesn't even factor into his calculus because he's not thinking of it personally. He's thinking about what's best for the United States. and it's really incredible.
It is refreshing, and I was actually going to transition to that. Your book, Bulletproof: The Truth About the Assassination Attempts on Donald Trump. It goes on sale on October 22nd. We're talking with Jack Posobiec. What can you tease us? You said you heard that there are other attempts that haven't even been discussed in the news. What have you learned about the Iran threat as you've been doing the research on this book and writing it?
So the information about the Iran threat is sketchy, to be fair. But essentially, what people have to understand is when the second individual tried to, and people know, I think, that there were 2 attempts on President Trump's life, and we go through those in detail. But let's get to the juicy stuff. That when that second attempt happened, this individual, Ryan Wesley Routh, released a piece of information, and it was a letter, and he had this sort of, it was almost like a dead man's letter that he had given to a friend in North Carolina in a lockbox and said, hold this for safekeeping. The FBI gets a hold of this letter. The DOJ then releases this letter, which is incredible, by the way, because the FBI is not exactly known for releasing information to the public, but they're more than happy to put this letter out there, which stated that I was not able to get this done. Someone else can do it, and if you do, there will be a bounty of $150,000 for you. FBI and DOJ and Merrick Garland had no problem making that public. What I've been told, though, is that bounty is directly tied to this Iranian plot. And so what the Iranians have done is, do they have people that they're trying to get into the country and all that? Yes. But what they've also done is set up essentially this bounty system where they said, almost like you're watching John Wick or something, where if anyone takes him out, you can collect on the bounty. And then Matt Gaetz comes on my program a couple of weeks ago here and drops a nuclear warhead into this entire narrative, saying that he's received information from the Department of Homeland Security that there are 5 active assassination teams that are currently attempting to take out President Trump, again, as we speak. So we're not just talking about something that happened in Butler. We're not just talking about something that happened in West Palm Beach. We get into all of that, but we're actually talking about an active situation that's going on as we speak. And so it is our estimation that if we can learn the truth about what really happened in Butler and West Palm Beach, so that July 13th and September 15th situation, we have to look at those through the lens of failed kits. Those were failed kits on Donald Trump, and there is a bounty out on his head. So if we dig into the details and dig into the data, then we hopefully can prevent something that could happen in the very near future.
We're talking with Jack Posobiec. New book, Bulletproof, is out on October 22nd. The Truth About the Assassination Attempts on Donald Trump. I do have a question. So we saw the one letter from Ryan Wesley Routh that says he failed, right? But part of me thinks that there would be a second letter if he had been successful.
I have the exact same thought. Is, did he have 2 dead man's letters? Because how would you know? And by the way, we're also told that letter was given to the friend about a month before this took place. So he went into an operational cycle. And by the way, we went in with, and I was the first person to break this just doing research for the book and then also just for my own human events, that we took the picture of Ryan Wesley Routh and I fed it to an proprietary, AI facial recognition software that I'll just say I have access to. Not all the time, but I do have a way to access it. And I put this picture and I said, find any instance of this individual's face that's out there publicly on the internet. I had no idea what would come out. I thought it would, I was looking for like social media accounts, that type of thing.
Yeah.
The very first ping that I get back on this is a propaganda video for the Azov battalion, this neo-Nazi Azov battalion that is over in Ukraine, that has received direct training. And the New York Times has written about this. Anyone can go find it. The Azov battalion has received direct training from the United States and the Central Intelligence Agency to conduct assassination.
It's just a happy little coincidence, right?
It's a happy little coincidence that's the first ping that I get back. I'm sitting there at my computer. I'm like, I got to text this to Alex Jones because his head's going to explode when he sees this one. I did text it to him. And, it's like, oh, look, it's the assassination squad that was trained by the CIA out of Ukraine. Okay, that's just wonderful. It's like you're sitting there going, you're just putting all the money into the Alex Jones's right jar. And that again, this was I remember the New York Times when they did their big write-up on the Azov Battalion and the CIA's involvement with them, even prior to the current outbreak of the Ukraine war in 2022. They said that they basically said that the Azov Battalion, quote unquote, went rogue and then began conducting assassinations inside of Russia proper that they totally didn't have anything to do with. They say, oh, yeah, the CIA has nothing to do with assassinations in Russia. Of course, just like all the regime change stuff that we were talking about. Of course, the CIA would never assassinate somebody. That would be crazy.
That's a wild thought.
Direct link between a guy who's got, and he's sitting there, think of this, with an unregistered, no serial number SKS rifle, which is a Kalashnikov-style rifle, the exact same kind that you see on the battlefield in Ukraine, sitting there on the 6th hole of the Donald Trump International Golf Course outside of West Palm Beach, right over by the airport, by PBI. And Trump is on the 5th hole. So this guy's one hole away. He's very, very close. So it's a couple of, he's just one green away, basically, from hitting President Trump. He's there, and he's got body armor that's set up. He essentially created an ad hoc hide site whereby if this guy had a little better training and he hadn't put the muzzle of his Kalashnikov through the fence, then there's no way he would have been detected because the Secret Service wasn't even using drones. And so you see these tactics that were taught by the CIA to the Azov Battalion then being brought back into the United States, and still we have not gotten information. How is this guy able to travel? How does he have money like this? We're told this guy is involved, Ryan Ralph, is involved with foreign fighters from Afghanistan, that he was traveling to Istanbul, Turkey, he was traveling to Taipei, Taiwan, that he was attempting, all in the last few years, attempting to gin up these plots, which are exactly what the CIA does. And just as I was talking about in those regime change wars, going after, this is what they did in Syria. They would find opposition leaders and funnel arms from Libya up to Syria. That's what the whole Benghazi situation was about with MANPAD. And so it also begs the question, how was he able to do all this when this guy has been a registered felon for over 20 years and didn't even have the ability to buy a gun? So how does this guy who's a felon, who's not able to be a lawful gun owner, collect all of these things, bring them to the United States, doing this international travel, and yet somehow the national security state is completely oblivious to it? We're also even told, by the way, that he did ping Homeland Security numerous times when he was going in and out of Hawaii, and yet Homeland Security kept giving him a pass. Look, again, it all goes back to these questions of what exactly is going on, how is he allowed to travel all around the world, and how does he end up from a CIA-trained organization on the battlefield of Ukraine to sitting there on the 6th hole of Trump International at West Palm Beach?
It's just a happy little coincidence. And Jack, I could talk to you all day, but real quick, where can we pre-order your book, Bulletproof?
Well, so look, for people to get the information on this, and I've also got to say that we've also hired a private investigation firm. And so when you buy the book, that helps us continue the investigation that's on the ground in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, that's on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania. If we've got to go to Ukraine, I will send people to Ukraine. And so you can get it. It's up on Amazon or wherever you get books. And then if you want to, there's some extra copies, special editions. The foreword, by the way, is by Donald Trump Jr., and you can get all that at orderbulletproof.com.
Jack Posobiec, thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
God bless, Chris.
Hey, God bless you. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN.